Hello, and welcome to the 17th edition of the GreenWave podcast by Synergy International. I'm Cinny, your host. The world is marking the 55th Earth Day today with a mix of celebration and sorrow. We celebrate our beautiful planet under the theme Our Power, Our Planet. But we also mourn the loss of Pope Francis, a global spiritual leader who championed that very cause. Pope Francis's passing yesterday casts a poignant shadow over this day. It's as if the earth itself is grieving the loss of one of its most ardent defenders. Today, we'll reflect on Pope Francis's remarkable environmental legacy, a legacy that has inspired millions to care more deeply for our common home. Pope Francis, born Jorge Mario Bergoglio, chose the name Francis, after St. Francis of Assisi, the patron saint of ecology. So it was clear from the start of his papacy in 2013 that care for creation would be close to his heart. In fact, in his very first week as Pope, he urged people everywhere to be protectors of creation. That set the tone for a papacy that consistently highlighted ecological responsibility as a moral and spiritual duty. He saw protecting the environment not as a secondary issue, but as essential to living out the faith and advocating for justice, especially for the poor who suffer most from environmental harm. The centerpiece of Pope Francis's environmental teaching was Laudato Si', his landmark encyclical released in 2015. Subtitled On Care for Our Common Home, it was a groundbreaking document, the first papal encyclical devoted entirely to environmental stewardship. Notably, Francis addressed it to every person living on this planet, not just Catholics, showing his desire for a universal dialogue. In Laudato Si', he made a compelling case that climate change and ecological destruction are fundamentally moral issues. He wrote with urgency and compassion, lamenting how our common home is being polluted and burdened and laid waste by human activity. He criticized the myth of unlimited material progress and the throwaway culture that leads to so much waste, warning of grave consequences if we continue the same path. Importantly, Laudato Si' connected the dots between environmental degradation and social injustice, what Francis called an integral ecology. He argued that everything is interconnected. The cry of the earth and the cry of the poor are one. The way we treat the planet affects the well-being of the most vulnerable among us, and vice versa. This holistic perspective resonated far beyond church walls. Laudato Si' was published just months before the pivotal Paris Climate Conference, known as COP21, in late 2015, and it had a real impact on the global conversation. World leaders and negotiators took note of the Pope's moral framing. His words were even quoted in meeting halls, a virtually unprecedented occurrence in climate talks. The encyclical helped build momentum and trust, especially in nations with large Catholic populations, nudging them towards stronger commitments. Pope Francis essentially told the world, caring for our planet is not optional, it's a moral obligation. By affirming the scientific consensus on human-driven climate change and wrapping it in an ethical narrative, he bridged a gap between science and spirituality. Environmental activists and experts praised him for injecting a sense of moral urgency and hope into the climate movement. He showed that faith and science stand stronger together, united by concern for our shared future. Francis didn't stop at issuing one document. He kept the drumbeat going. In the years that followed, he became a steady voice on the world stage, urging ecological responsibility. He addressed the United Nations and other global forums, pleading for the protection of the planet's fragile ecosystems. Francis was not afraid to reach out in unprecedented ways. In 2018, he invited top oil and gas executives to the Vatican and told them plainly that our energy use must not destroy civilization, urging a rapid transition to clean energy. He even convened a special bishops' synod in 2019 to address the plight of the Amazon rainforest and its indigenous peoples, emphasizing that environmental destruction and social injustice go hand in hand. Through such actions, Pope Francis showed that the Church could be an active participant in confronting the environmental crisis, not just through statements, but by fostering dialogue and pressing for bold solutions from all quarters. Pope Francis also practiced what he preached within the Church. He established September 1st as the annual World Day of Prayer for the care of creation, joining a tradition started by the Orthodox Church. Each year, on that day, he urged people to undergo an ecological conversion, a profound change of heart, in how we relate to nature and to each other. In doing so, he echoed the words of Pope John Paul II, who decades earlier had called for just such a conversion. Francis built on the efforts of his predecessors. John Paul II had warned that our mistreatment of nature was a threat to humanity's future, and Pope Benedict XVI, often nicknamed the Green Pope, had championed environmental protection and even installed solar panels at the Vatican. Pope Francis honoured this continuity, but also greatly amplified it, making care for creation a central priority of the Church in a way it had never been before. One of Francis's great strengths was his ability to connect with people far beyond the pews. He had a gift for making climate change and ecology feel personal and urgent to everyone. He often warned that humanity has no time to waste in addressing the climate crisis, and he spoke in clear, relatable terms about our shared responsibility. He also embraced modern platforms and creative approaches to spread his message. He participated in a 2022 documentary film called The Letter, where he sat down with young activists, indigenous leaders, and scientists to dialogue about the planet's future. The sight of the Pope listening to grassroots voices and engaging in open conversation showed his humility and his commitment to learning from all people of goodwill. He even made a video appearance for a TED Talk, urging collective action to give the Earth a sustainable future. Pope Francis understood the power of storytelling and solidarity. He wanted the cry of the poor and the cry of the Earth to be heard in every corner of the globe. He also worked to unite different communities in this mission. In October 2021, he gathered dozens of religious leaders from around the world, along with scientists at the Vatican, to issue a joint appeal for strong climate action ahead of the COP26 summit. Standing together with leaders of many different faiths, he declared that caring for creation is a common moral duty across faiths and cultures. Future generations will never forgive us if we miss this opportunity, Pope Francis warned at that gathering. By fostering such unity, he reinforced that protecting our common home is truly a universal value, uniting people of all backgrounds. Beyond high-profile events, Pope Francis made sure the Church took concrete steps towards sustainability. In 2021, he launched the Laudato Si' Action Platform to guide Catholic institutions and families in adopting practical measures for sustainability and environmental justice. He also committed the Vatican City-State to reach net zero carbon emissions by mid-century. In short, he wanted the Church to lead by example, to live out the changes it was calling for in the world. The impact of Pope Francis's leadership rippled outward. Many individuals and groups drew inspiration from him. The Laudato Si' movement, formerly the Global Catholic Climate Movement, grew into a worldwide network mobilizing Catholics to care for creation. Parishes started community gardens and tree planting campaigns. Catholic organizations pushed for divestment from fossil fuels and investment in renewable energy, emboldened by the Pope's stance. Young people in the Church felt especially encouraged. They saw that the highest authority in their faith cared passionately about the environment, just as they did. Even secular activists found an ally in Francis. A memorable example is Greta Thunberg's brief meeting with the Pope in 2019. He gave her a warm encouragement to continue your fight, showing solidarity with the youth climate movement. It was a symbolic gesture that resonated worldwide. Tributes to Pope Francis's environmental advocacy have poured in from across the globe. The Secretary-General of the United Nations praised him as a leader who bridged scientific urgency with moral clarity. Environmental groups noted how he had a unique ability to touch hearts and minds, making the climate crisis feel personal to millions. Many have expressed gratitude that Pope Francis brought issues of sustainability, inequality, and climate justice to the forefront of global consciousness, framing them as fundamental matters of right and wrong. Now, with Pope Francis remembered in hearts and minds, a new chapter begins. There is hope and expectation that the next Pope will carry this green legacy forward. Francis has firmly embedded care for our common home into the Church's mission. It's hard to imagine any future Pope ignoring what has become such a defining issue of our time, and a defining feature of Francis's papacy. The world will be watching to see if that commitment remains strong. Many are optimistic that it will. The cardinals who elect the new Pope have seen how Pope Francis's leadership on ecology brought the Church newfound respect and relevance among younger generations and in international discussions. Continuing that momentum would honour his legacy and meet the urgency of the environmental crisis that still unfolds. Of course, Pope Francis always reminded us that caring for creation is a task for all humanity, not only for popes or the global leaders with true vision. This Earth Day's theme, Our Power, Our Planet, resonates with that very message. We all have the power to contribute to the healing of our world, each in our own way. Francis believed strongly in the actions of ordinary people, families who reduce waste and recycle, farmers who care for the land, educators who instill ecological values, young people who demand change. He taught that all of us working together can be instruments of care for the earth, our common home. So even as we look to leaders for guidance, we remember to look in the mirror and recognise our own responsibility. Our collective power, joined together, can indeed reshape our planet's future. As we say goodbye to Pope Francis, we feel both sorrow and gratitude. Sorrow at losing a gentle, courageous shepherd who led by example, and gratitude for the gift of hope and vision he gave us when it was so urgently needed. His teachings and actions have planted seeds that will continue to grow. We see those seeds in every community switching to cleaner energy, in every young person moved to protect the environment, and in every interfaith initiative for our common home. He always reminded us not to lose hope, believing that human beings, despite our flaws, are capable of tremendous goodness and renewal. On this Earth Day, as we reflect on his legacy, Pope Francis would surely encourage us to keep striving for a better, more caring world. He would urge us not to be disheartened, but to carry on the work of caring for creation with even greater resolve. The best way we can honour his memory is by continuing the mission he championed. Each of us can take up a part of that mission, advocating for stronger environmental protections, living more sustainably, educating others, and building communities of solidarity with the earth and the poor. In doing so, we keep his spirit alive and build on the foundation he laid. Pope Francis's environmental legacy is ultimately one of hope in action. He showed that leadership rooted in compassion and justice can ignite change across even the widest divides. He reminded the world that we share one home and one future, and that we have a duty to safeguard both. His voice may now be silent, but his message resounds louder than ever. Hear the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor, and let that guide our choices. If we do so, his dream of a healed and harmonious planet will live on through each of us. Well, that's a wrap on our 17th GreenWave podcast episode. We appreciate you sharing your time. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart, Podchaser, Boomplay, and Player FM, so feel free to follow the pod and share with friends. We'd love if you would leave a review. If you have missed any of our LinkedIn posts or the GreenWave Gazette, you can always catch us on LinkedIn, X, Facebook, Instagram, or visit synergy-international.net. We'll keep reflecting on the trends shaping the sustainable world. Until next time, keep riding the green wave of sustainability. Stay inspired and keep advocating for a healthier planet, just like Pope Francis would have wanted.